Hey there, vinyl lovers, listen up. It's time to take your vinyl experience to the next level with SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop has gorgeous handcrafted record storage, exquisitely cool turntable furniture, all made with beautiful hardwood out of the USA. Sidetracked Workshop blends style, functionality, and durability. You spend a small fortune on records, don't keep them in a crate. Store and display in style with a console or cabinet from SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Elevate your vinyl setup at SidetrackedWorkshop.com.
And now, on with the show. Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 466 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And ladies and gentlemen, this week we are welcoming back to the show legendary producer, Mr. Eddie Kramer. Eddie and I are going to deep dive into the history and legacy of Electric Lady Studios, the revolutionary studio space built for Jimi Hendrix's creative genius. Now today, Eddie and I are going to talk all about the groundbreaking design, Jimi's involvement, including his final sessions in Electric Lady, and of course, the incredible impact this iconic studio has had on rock music history. Now, this is all sparked by the incredible documentary Electric Lady Studios, A Jimi Hendrix Vision. That doco is now screening in select theaters, offering a behind-the-scenes look at the creation of this groundbreaking studio. It includes rare interviews, rarely seen pictures, and a lot more. You can check it out and see if it's playing near you at jimihendrix.com. Plus, you can pre-order the Blu-ray and exclusive 5 LP vinyl box set, which includes rare alternate mixes and outtakes, essential materials for any Jimi Hendrix fan. That's at jimihendrix.com. And just to point out, in case you didn't know, for more Hendrix-related episodes of the Vinyl Guide podcast, here are some key episodes you may want to scroll back in our episode list and check out, which includes episode 429, the first time Eddie Kramer came to the show, where we talked all about working with Jimi, and of course some of the other artists working on Led Zeppelin 2, the Robert Ludwig mix, and lots more. That's episode 429 of the Vinyl Guide. Episode 377, Jimi Hendrix as experienced by his sister Janie. Janie Hendrix, Jimi's sister, came on the show. She shared personal stories. She discusses the Hendrix archives, rare memorabilia, recordings, and a lot more. That's episode 377. And of course, you don't want to miss episode 115 with Jimi Hendrix archivist John McDermott. John talks all about how the Hendrix legacy is preserved, unreleased material, managing the tapes, and of course, the immense impact of Jimi's work. Now, these episodes provide a deep look into Hendrix's life, career, and of course the ongoing effort to preserve his legacy through Experience Hendrix. And these are perfect for vinyl collectors and Jimi Hendrix fans alike. Just follow the Vinyl Guide podcast in your podcast app, and you'll get access to all these episodes, plus hundreds more. And with that, let's talk Electric Lady Studios and other audio nerdery with the legend himself, Mr. Eddie Kramer.
Buongiorno. You're good.
Yeah. Arrivederci. Is that? No, that's goodbye. Oh, sorry. All right.
Right.
Not yet.
I think say if we were in Italy, I'd say buongiorno, come vai? Yeah. And then the inevitable baffangu.
Well, and you're doing the right thing. You're talking with your hands too. So very good.
Right. Because I love Italy so much.
Excellent.
No problemo. So,
all right. This week on the
welcome to our mutual nightmares, I guess. Is this.
Oh, this is not a nightmare. This is a dream come true. Hey,
let's not quite go there.
Yeah,
I don't want to know about your private dreams. Dude, I'm sure they're fine.
The day is young. I understand. All right. We're here with legendary engineer, producer, and audio nerd, Eddie Kramer. We are celebrating Electric Lady Studios, a Jimi Hendrix Vision documentary now screening at select theaters with a Blu-ray box set with CDs and vinyl, 5 LPs altogether, available for pre-order at jimihendrix.com. Eddie, thank you so much for making some time to talk about this amazing film. Now, we're going to talk about Electric Lady Studios. In modern times, musicians having their own studios is quite common. I mean, some more deluxe than others, of course. But when Jimi and your team got to work on Electric Lady, it was not only rare, but truly an innovation in approach. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair to say, and he was the first that I was aware of. Certainly, having come from the UK in '68, and having spent the previous 5, 6 years, 7 years, or whatever it was, working in English studios, which was
Mm-hmm.
wonderful training ground, and then coming to America in '68 and starting at the record plant with Jimmy, um, having brought over the original 4-track half-inch tapes and then transferring to 12. So there was this whole sort of thing about being in a studio in those days. Some of them were better than others. So for instance, Olympic in London was actually quite a fantastic studio because it was designed mainly for orchestral stuff. And of course, it had to be more grandiose and had to have different sort of room spaces that were more cool. But still, it was a bloody box. It may or rectangle, whatever. It transformed when we decided to go ahead and build Electric Lady Studios, bringing in John Stark as the architect. Between he and myself and an acoustician and the team behind us, and we had a great team behind us, we transformed what was a basement nightclub into the world's most innovative, most advanced technically studio in the world at that point. And it was gorgeous, and it broke all the barriers in terms of what it looked like, what it felt like, what the gear was like. All of those things were at the very top and at the very peak of what one could do in 1969, 1970. So yes, was it outstanding? I believe so. To this day, it still is outstanding. We got lucky with certain things, but you're absolutely right. Nobody had had a studio built specifically for them, a rock artist, that is, specifically built for them. And it broke all the bloody rules. And after that, people went, oh, there's a new way of doing things.
Because a lot of the studios that were existing at that time, as I understand, I mean, they were probably built in the 50s and 60s with very different applications in mind, and maybe not the artist workflow was up front, like something like the comfort that an artist would want to have to be able to foster that creativity. It seems to me that Electric Lady really approached it very differently than other studios that were available.
Yes, it was Jimmy's home. It was second home, rather. He lived down the corner on 12th Street. You know New York, right?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
Well,
he's 4 blocks away from the studio, something like that. Yeah.
no, Jimmy was on 12th Street. So 12th Street, yeah, I mean, but it was a 10-minute walk. But he walked to the studio from his apartment, hat, all his clothes, his gear, carrying a guitar. And people would say, hey, hi, Jimmy. Never bothered him, He was just, he was so appreciative of the fact that people never bothered him. And it was so cool. I mean, the village was cool in those days. It was cool just to say, hi, Jimmy, and he would walk by, you know what I mean? And he would come up to the door, with the big circle where the window was and a closed circuit TV camera. Boom, down he goes. Once that door locked, game was on. He was in his second home. This is where he created. This was his happy space.
Yeah. Now, building a studio, I mean, no simple feat. There's a lot of acoustic treatments you have to have, and just the way sound impacts and whatnot. You had practical knowledge and experience in operating studios, but up to that point, had you built a studio?
Not actually built. Well, yes. My demo studio that I had called KPS Sound Studios in England in 1960. Christ, what was it? 4, I think. Had egg crates, the 12 by 12 egg crates that my mom went to all of the grocery stores in the area and got all these lovely egg crates, and I glued them to the bloody wall all over the studio because that was the only thing I could think of that wasn't expensive. That was my demo. So it was my only experience with building a studio. However, after that, I did have a lot of experience working with my then partner, who I'd met through I was working for a studio called Pi, Pye,
Mm.
Pi Records, Pi International Records, who, by the way, represented Warner Records, well, which was really Reprise in those days, and a lot of the blues and R&B things went through that label. But I borrowed stuff, quote unquote, from Pi, from the engineering department to help my little studio, which was just a demo studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a hell of a lot about the practicalities of building a studio, as primitive as it was. But from there, I went to build, help build another studio with my partner. Um, do you know the history of the Rolling Stones when they first recorded? They recorded at a demo studio called Regent Sound. Now, Regent Sound was in Tin Pan Alley, which is where all the publishing companies were in London. But literally, it was a two-track studio. That's it. Mono and then stereo. We got very lucky. And that's where the Stones recorded. But the guy who owned it, Lord Baring, boy, he was. He wanted to build a new studio, so he tapped us and said, you know, I'm buying your studio, and by the way, could you guys help me build this other studio? So we built a 4-track recording studio for him, which in those days, now we're talking 65, late 65, man, that was very advanced. And actually, the Beatles recorded Fixing a Hole in that studio.
Oh, okay.
And then 66, that's when I left that studio and went to Olympic, which was also 4-track, but then things started to change. And, you know, I'm giving you the whole history from the old Carton Street studio, which was all tube and everything like that. We moved to Barnes, which is the big studio. And it was still 4-track. And all the Hendrix records and the Stones and stuff, we just did it 4 to 4 to 4, half-inch 4-track. So coming from that background of seeing how studios were put together, what it took, it really stuck with me. And, you know, coming to New York in 68 to a brand new studio called the Record Plant, it was the shock of my life because I'd never seen a multi-track machine beyond 4. This was 12-track 1-inch. And Jimmy would look at me and say, hey, man, look, we got 8 more tracks. I said, yeah, but I'm going to mix that shit.
So Electric Lady, it was 24-track from day one. Is that right?
Well, that's not quite true.
Okay.
What it was very much 16, which was what pretty much everybody was going for in those days. But I saw the writing on the wall. I knew it was coming. And I had the console wired for 24, and I had the wiring harness for converting the 16-track machine to 24, which we could do quite easily. And that's, you know, after Jimmy passed, that's what happened. Yeah, in the early 70s.
Right. Well, 16-track was still astronomical.
Oh, 16-track was
3 years prior, I think Beatles were, you know, on an 8-track for Sergeant Pepper, and that was the top of the mountain just a few years earlier. So getting into the studio now, Electric Lady, the name Electric Lady, was there ever any alternative names for it before settling on that?
This was Jimmy's domain. This is his studio. And we quit. I mean, we were Electric Lady. Oh, okay. But within a few months, it just felt right.
Yeah.
You know, it's the sort of thing you scratch your head for. Electric Lady. Oh, okay. This is what Jimmy wants. It works. It is an Electric Lady. And in fact, the very first person I hired to help run the studio, to be the manager, was a lovely lady named Linda Sloman, who's in the documentary. You see her. She was terrific. She ran that studio incredibly well. She was wonderful with clients. And it proves, I mean, if you look at the history of some of the world's greatest recording studios, from Abbey Road, East West, Capitol, you name it, women run them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God, because they have a better handle than guys running studios. They really do. I think we screw it up more. They're much more adept and adaptable, and sort of can talk the clients down from a high screaming Mimi down to, okay, I'll do what you want.
Yeah, people tend to be on their best behavior when there's a lady in there.
Yeah, justified. So yeah.
So the building was purchased originally. Jimmy had a vision for a nightclub. Was that nightclub destined to be known as Electric Lady, or was that name even talked about before settled on a studio?
The Electric Lady name came after, but you know the history of it, which we show in the doc, which is this was a nightclub that Jimmy loved to jam in, and when it went under and was sitting there doing nothing, Jimmy and Mike Jeffries, his manager, decided to buy, because this was Jimmy's place where he loved to go and jam. And he said, well, let's buy this so I can go and jam with my friends. That was the basis of it. And that's how John Storick, my dear friend and partner in crime in the audio business, that's how he got hired, because they had seen a picture of this nightclub in New York called Celebration, and it's Cerebrum, excuse me, and it was in Life magazine, and Jimmy and Mike was, geez, let's look at this. It's great. And they went down there to check it out, to see what it was about. And they said, let's hire that guy, find that guy. You know? And John had just graduated from Princeton in his early 20s, and he got the gig designing a nightclub. Cool. All right. So what are we going to do about sound? Well, yeah, Jimmy's got this idea. He wants to put a little 8-track machine in the corner just to record some jams. That's all he wanted to know. Just, here, let's have a nightclub with a little machine in the back. Okay. So let's call Kramer and see what he thinks. All right. So Kramer comes down, walks down the stairs, and that Kramer guy, moi, walking around and looking at what was to be the nightclub. There was so much demolition and crap and everything, walls being knocked down, and I'm looking around. Nightclub in the village? You crazy? First of all, guys, just think about this. Jimmy spends about $200,000 a year. This was in 1969, 1970 dollars. That's a lot of money. Why don't we just build him the best studio in the world? This will be his place that he can come and go, close the door, and create. And he scratched his head, that's a very good idea. Why don't we do that? So Storick was fired, then rehired to help design Electric Lady, or to design Electric Lady, excuse me.
Yeah.
And he did a brilliant job. And John and I worked very closely. I spec'd out the electronics and all of that sort of stuff, and where things should go, and hired a great staff. And we worked our asses off for a year.
So John was the architect, and you were the driving force, helping manifest Jimmy's vision. But he didn't have any experience with building a studio or acoustic treatments, or not that much, as I understand, right?
No, Jimmy had no. He knew what he wanted it to feel like, and there was certain direction. Well, the classic story is, I think he had come down one day and he was looking around, and he said, hey, I think he talked to John, or to me, I think it was John he talked to, and he said, hey, man, you think we could have some round holes in these doors? Oh, is that what you want, Jimmy? Okay. So what happened was, apparently there was another studio being built somewhere else with a friend of John's. Those doors, and these were thick steel doors, they were serious doors.
You got to be keeping the sound out and everything, right? Yeah.
Well, they're special with drop seals and all the rest of it. So they went, and new doors appeared with the Ramportos, and they're still sitting there. They're still swinging back and forth.
The studio seems so full of innovations, including, like, for example, seating for friends. Jimmy would notoriously bring a lot of people in the studio. It was a bit of a party atmosphere, but the studio was designed, as I understand, so if he did bring in friends, they would stay out of the sightlines, so they wouldn't distract the engineers. But
there's that classic picture that I took, which is in the movie, where the console's at this height, and then you step down, and then below the console on a nice bench with lots of velvet cushions and stuff is what the audience or the friends would do. They would sit down there, and they're completely out of sight. You don't see them because the console's up here, and we look through the control window going out that way. They're I don't want to see them.
Right.
And I tell you something, there were not many people coming around on these sessions with Jimmy. It was business. We were working our asses off, and Jimmy was focused. Girlfriend, 2 or 3, whatever, how many friends, the guys would come in and do background vocals and stuff like that, but it wasn't like the Record Plant days where it was like packed, everybody smoking weed and like 20, 10, 15, 20 people in the control room. And there was this sort of green cloud hanging out the console all the time.
Do you think that was just Jimmy just kind of evolving beyond having that gang of people around him? He realized how distracting they were, and he wanted this place to.
I would say that's a very strong possibility. I think the idea here, he was focused. He knew what he wanted to do. He was happier than a clam. He was so overwhelmed and overjoyed about that studio. He walked in, this was his place. Part of ownership. And the work got done. We were leading edge, leading edge in New York City. And you walked in that studio, from the time you plug in, man, we got sounds fast. And he worked at a hell of a pace. Jeez. Mm-hmm. And cracking jokes and stuff. It was a marathon.
How
4 months.
How did the team? Okay, so he used it for 4 months before he went to Europe and didn't come back. During that time, how did the team balance with other bookings? Because obviously there's payroll to make, there's the bills to be paid. How did the team balance, Jimmy using the studio versus other artists?
Well, the other artists hadn't even arrived yet. It was just Jimmy.
Okay.
It was closed. I mean, basically, there was nobody except Jimmy. And we were, Shimon Ron, the chief engineer, as you see in the movie, he was back in the shop building or rebuilding Studio B console, which we got gypped on. That's a whole nother story. Yeah. But no, the idea was, let's pull all the tapes that were in the closet, 2 massive closets in the hallway. Jimmy had, I think I had a key and Jim Marin had a key, and they were locked up until time for the session. The first couple of weeks, Jimmy and I just sat there and audited the tapes and did some overdubs. He'd be listening to something, hey, I could fix that. Bang, plug the guitar in. You have to do a quick solo, move on, a little vocal overdub or something. But essentially, that time was spent refreshing Jimmy's memory and mine about what had taken place in 1969, because that's what he was doing. He was jamming all through 1969, which is why the bills are so bloody high. And he would go to any and every studio he could in New York City. I remember getting phone calls in the middle of the night. Hey, man, I'm up at the Hit Factory, and hey, it's not really working, blah, blah, blah. Hey, man, you got to come up and help me. Okay, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, jeez. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Jump in a cab, go uptown, fix the stuff, make sure it's all sounding good. And I'd leave there about 6, somewhere, go back home, sleep for a few miles, and go back to helping to, get the studio ready. But it was good that he did that, because thank goodness the tape was rolling. Yes, did they overcharge him? Okay. But in the end, there was a lot of material, and that was the material that we were focusing on. Mm-hmm. Leaving stuff out that was not considered for the record, but mainly focusing on what was great for the album, and then cutting new songs. And that's when the fun started, when we started cutting new tracks. There was an atmosphere of great anticipation and joy. And when I said, okay, take one, bam, they were off to the races. They were going. I mean, Jimmy would be nodding and yeah, this is going great. Oh, sorry, you made a mistake. And then he would stop the band and crack jokes and play a Batman theme or do something really hilarious, and the whole band would break up laughing, and then we'd start again. Okay, here we go. But it was like this tremendous roller coaster, but not too many downs. I felt that the roller coaster was speeding up as we got to the end of the time we spent together there.
Oh. Now the box set, all that material, those are takes, audio that was recorded at Electric Lady. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The 5 LP box set. What were the final sessions that Jimmy worked on? What were the last take or even the last note that he recorded in the studio? Hey there, all you record nerds. I want to tell you about bagsunlimited.com. Bagsunlimited.com has a huge selection of vinyl record supplies. Whether you collect LPs, 7-inch singles, 78 shellacs, or anything in between, bagsunlimited.com will sort you out. From polyline sleeves to cardboard record mailers to 7-inch storage boxes and archive quality record sleeves, protect your records of any size and shape at bagsunlimited.com. Whether you have a small personal record collection or you're running a massive record shop, you can grab a small supply or even buy in bulk at bagsunlimited.com. And they've got some really incredible, unique stuff. Bagsunlimited.com even has special size sleeves made especially to protect your box sets, storage boxes and sleeves for cassette tapes, protective supplies for reel-to-reel, and yes, even 8-tracks. Just go to bagsunlimited.com, click on audio supplies, and prepare to be impressed by all the options they have. That's bagsunlimited.com. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10. Hey there, audiophiles. If you're seeking stylish furniture to showcase your stereo and record collection, well, look no further than sidetrackedworkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop designs extraordinarily elegant record cabinets and consoles that add sophistication and panache to your music hobby. Handcrafted in the good old USA in the vinyl-loving city of Portland, Oregon, Sidetracked Workshop's designs are a music lover's dream. Made with real walnut veneered wood and brass accents, these gorgeous designs add class and taste to the record room and ship fully assembled and ready to enjoy. Just check out the designs for yourself at sidetrackedworkshop.com. Look, you spend thousands of dollars on records. Don't keep them in a crate, and don't risk your records on those feeble wooden pegs from IKEA. Your music deserves the dignity of Sidetracked Workshop. That's sidetrackedworkshop.com. Elegant solutions for the vinyl lifestyle. What were the final sessions that Jimmy worked on? What were the last take or even the last note that he recorded in the studio?
Whoa, that's a good question. Probably could have been Angel. It's possible. I'd have to check. I think it was, but before you print that, I'll check that with Don. The fortunate thing was that we had mixed 4 songs together, which was fantastic because, you know, when we were mixing together, I got to understand where his head was at in terms of what his preferences were. And those 4 songs really sounded pretty damn good. And that gave me a great template. I mean, I knew that when we were working, there was always this constant sort of eyeballing and nudging and stuff because we would rehearse as we went. No computers in those days. And we really understood each other very well. And I would sometimes surprise him and he would sometimes surprise me. But the mixing in that short period of time on those songs gave me a guiding point as to how the rest of the album probably should go.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in the beginning, on the first 2 albums, it was just me mixing. But Electric Ladyland, it was me. And then Jimmy started to help a bit. So he really wanted to get into the mixing thing. He wanted to try to understand how it all was put together.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always a lot to learn when it comes to the mixing, you know.
So I built a studio before, and certainly nothing like Electric Lady, but I've built a studio before, and the first couple of weeks, you're just trying to work out noises and little, goofy things with the board and the wiring and everything. Was Jimmy around there, or how did you guys kind of work
No,
those first
we
troubleshooting, I guess?
wouldn't let him in unless it was right. I mean, the
Okay.
studio work from the time he walked in, there would be minor things, like tape machine breaking down or a bad module, but those are easy things to get around because of the big console. But essentially, that board was working. He would call, hey, Eddie, can I come down? Ah, we're almost ready. We're almost there. And I remember doing a piano demo and are you running, guys? Okay, fine. I start banging away at some chords. Come in, have a listen, wind back. It records, it plays back. We're in the game. The studio's almost ready. And it was the effort of the entire staff. I mean, the tech staff and myself, when we worked late into the night every night. It was nuts, but it paid off. So when Jimmy walked in, we're ready to record, dude. Let's go. And yeah, of course you make adjustments, but we would never do anything to impede the progress of what he was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Did the studio have acetate facilities? Jimmy
No,
could take a copy home? Okay.
no, we always give him a tape because he had tape machines at home.
What's changed with Electric Lady over the years? Is there still kind of like a bit of a shrine, some areas that are still specifically unchanged since 1970?
Well, the shape of the room is exactly as it was.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is it's slightly shorter. The control room has been pushed out a couple of feet to accommodate what is considered today slightly bigger control room. And the vocal booth is not there anymore, if you look at the pictures. But essentially, from an acoustic point of view, that ceiling is exactly the way it was 50 plus years ago. The walls it essentially has not changed acoustically since the time it was built. And it
Wow.
still sounds ridiculously great. People walk in there and you go, oh, wow, that's what it's all about. Not only does this place sound right, but the vibe, there's such a strong vibe in there. Whether you've created it in your mind or whether you believe it, I believe it. I believe the vibe to be so strong in there that people want to go in there and share in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In that space, that creative space.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to create music, and that's what it was all about. That's why we built a studio.
Yeah. So many other artists have recorded at Electric Lady. I mean, hundreds of artists, thousands of records we all have in our collection. What other sessions did you oversee? I think John Lennon even recorded at Electric Lady. Is that right?
Yeah, he did. Yes, he was in the back in Studio B, but he was also on a session that I was recording. It was David Bowie. There was a thing called Fame.
Ah,
And
okay.
that's John Lennon playing acoustic guitar on that. And his rhythm was tight. Damn, he was good. And he and David were good friends. And yes, that was quite a momentous occasion. But he was quite often in the back in Studio B with Yoko.
Okay. All right. They were recording or something else.
I believe so, yes. I wasn't in on that session. I was busy on some other things.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay,
mean,
so
Zeppelin, I mixed a whole bunch of Zeppelin stuff there. And
mhm.
Carly Simon's album, her first album there, which was right in the middle when Jimmy died. Yeah, I was in
Mhm.
the middle of recording Carly, and
What
yeah, that was a shock.
what do you remember about the David Bowie John Lennon session for Fame? Because I asked Earl Slick the same question. He couldn't remember anything.
Oh, that's a shame. Um, well, I mean, I don't know how many versions of the story there are, but this is my recollection, which is in the book, which I'm still in the midst of writing.
Mhm.
Um, Session was booked. The musicians started appearing. Um, Rhythm section gets their shit together. The drums are in, bass is in. It's Carlos Alamo on guitar, and I can't remember the drummer's name, who was a famous drummer, but for the life of me, his name escapes me. But it was Carlos's jamming, the bass, drums, guitar. I was getting sounds, and Carlos starts playing this riff, dink, 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 and I'm rolling tape just to keep things, so in case somebody wants to. And as they're playing it, Bowie walks in through on the door of the control room, bursts in, and he goes roaring right past me, opens the door of the studio. I want that. Give me that. I want that riff. So he said, Carlos, keep playing it. So between Carlos and he and the rhythm section, they wrote the basic chord sequence and completed the song, I think, within 45 minutes, just to get the song down. And that was the beginning of Fame, based on that riff. Wow. And then I believe there was some, after the song came out, and Carlos Alamo apparently went to the management and said, hey, what about my royalties? And then I think there was a big kerfuffle over that. You could have to ask him.
He probably remembers much better.
But that was how that session started. I mean,
mm-hmm.
get your buddies into play on it, and then the B side was also with John Lennon playing. It was called All Around the Universe. I think it was one of John's songs.
Okay. Had Jimmy returned from Europe, what were the plans for the next set of recordings?
It was to finish this. It was supposed to be a double album.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly was enough material for that. And I know he wanted to come back to finish it. He was having, obviously, managerial issues, and he wanted to let Michael Jeffries go, which probably would have been a good idea, considering their relationship and how that all went. But his idea at that time, from what I could gather from his conversations, was he wanted to put together the original team with Chaz Chandler helping to produce, with me, Jimmy, of course, being the other producer. He certainly had enough experience to do that. He certainly did it on Electric Ladyland, mm-hmm. That's for sure. That was his record, essentially. That was the idea.
Okay.
Let's get going. Let's make more music. And he wanted to expand his musical horizon, that's for sure. I mean, I know he heard strings, horns, he heard music on a larger scale, and he loved classical music, absolutely, and jazz. Yeah.
Okay. And the recording, I mean, the Electric Lady was large enough to be able to accommodate that now. So he did have that option if you wanted to have a string section in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Steve Winwood, would he have been part of that next set of recordings? Or?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because you hear the demo with Steve Winwood. It's brilliant, that little demo. So there was always this wonderful respect, Jimmy for Steve and vice versa, because Jimmy just loved his keyboard playing, and he actually wanted him in a band. He wanted Steve to come and join, but that wasn't to happen. But his playing on this track is fabulous. Steve, they must have been jamming up at the Scene nightclub, and Jimmy says, "Come down, let's go jam." Okay, in my new studio, right? You can imagine how proud he was. And so Steve brought in this little thing called a rhythm ace, which is just one of those early primitive drum machines, that kind of sound, and plugged it into an amp. And then there was a Wurlitzer sitting there. So Jimmy was playing guitar. He was jamming on these chords, and Steve just, okay, I'm following you, Jimmy. Okay, I got it. And that's the beauty of this album, is you get these moments. That was actually one of the first things that was actually recorded in Electric Lady Studios. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's a stunning record set you've done here, Eddie. And I was just speaking with Lee Loughnane of Chicago, and they had done some touring with Jimmy. And at one point, Jimmy had made the overs like, yeah, we should do something together. So did he have any other special guests kind of lined up, or any thoughts of other musicians he wanted to play with when he got back from England?
That I don't know, but like I said, the concept going forward was to expand his musical horizons, to increase the size of stuff, whether it's a bigger percussion section, horns, definitely he wanted horns. I know that. And then the strings probably would have come later. I don't know. But his musical canvas, instead of being like this, it was CinemaScope.
Yeah. Oh, this is an amazing, amazing documentary you guys have here. Electric Lady Studios, a Jimi Hendrix vision. The documentary is now screening in certain theaters. However, there is the box set. A Blu-ray version's coming out. There's going to be CDs and vinyl. I think 3 CDs, or you can get the 5 vinyl LP package. These alternate mixes of some of these songs that we know very well sound amazing. Where have they been hiding these alternate mixes?
These mixes were done because we needed to, when we were putting this record together, we needed to have alternate mixes. And we went through literally every single tape and made sure that we got the very best of the outtakes. And once we had sort of collated that and pulled that down to 1 or 2 or 3 takes, we would actually mix 2 or 3 of them to find which one is the one that's going to give us what we're looking for, which is an insight into how the final mix would be. Is it a good complement? Does it show the progression of what Jimmy's mind was going through? And some of them are so close, but yet they're different. The tempo shifts in different ways, or they're actually physically slower, or there's just a breakdown that was so close. I mean, and then Jimmy cracks a really silly, funny joke. And those are the moments that I live for, is that interaction when the band's just collapsing and Jimmy's taking the piss out of me, out of Mitch, out of the roadies, stuff going back and forth. And then quickly right back on track. All right, we got to get this now. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bam. Oh, another mistake. Yeah, you only got 2 minutes. Okay. All right. I could make it 1.5 minutes. All right, let's go. There was this intensity and joy. It was like I could feel him almost like running up a mountain. He was almost out of breath, and he was so excited to get in the studio and play because it sounded great. It was his place. This was his pride and joy. This was his. It was like a wonderful womb-like environment that he just felt so happy with.
Well, it's captured very well here. So again, I want to redirect folks over to jimihendrix.com. Grab that vinyl set. Jimmy's one of these artists I could just listen to all day long. 9 record set, no problem. This one's 5 records plus a Blu-ray of this Electric Lady documentary, and it's an absolute joy to watch. And a privilege to speak with you about it, Eddie. Thanks for stopping by the Vinyl Guide, and we look forward to speaking with you on the next set of very compelling projects that seem to be coming out frequently from the Experience Hendrix team.
Don't forget, vinyl lives.
Well, there we go. Mr. Eddie Kramer. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend himself. I love the fact he loves coming on the show. You're always welcome back, Eddie. Anytime you want to talk audio or Hendrix or whatever else you're working on, we always have the mic on here at the Vinyl Guide for you. I love the work that the Experience Hendrix team are doing. Not only Eddie, but Sister Janie and John McDermott. The quality of stuff they put out from the Experience Hendrix archive is stellar. I always look forward to hearing whatever they're up to. And that's it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on social media. Put them out there on Reddit forums and Facebook groups. Share them out on your feeds, wherever that may lead. And please leave us positive reviews in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's a huge help. Takes you just a moment, but it helps expand the listenership of the Vinyl Guide podcast, and that is certainly appreciated. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.